Good morning, YouTube, BookTube. This is Johnny. Thought I'd make a video this morning because I don't know when I'll be able to make another video, because today is a Thursday morning. It's June the 27th. It's 7:44 here in West Michigan. Yeah, I live here in Holland, Michigan. You go west of us, and in about 15 minutes is Lake Michigan. We live right next to Lake Michigan. One thing about Holland, it's tree city, lots of gardens and flowers, and it's settled by the Dutch back in the 19th century. So there's a lot of Dutch culture here. Of course, Holland. It's called Holland, Michigan. So yeah, I like Holland. My wife was born here in Holland, Michigan. This is where she grew up, and that's why we live here. As you all know, I was born in Oakland, California, but I didn't. When I was growing up, I lived all over the place. My mother, when she you all know my mother was killed in an auto wreck when I was 16 back in 1968. But she was married to sailors, a couple of sailors, and so we lived all over Maryland and Virginia and California, and when I was really young, before my mother, her first marriage, we lived in Washington, D.C. when I was really a little boy. That's where I'm the oldest of 5. My brother, who's after me, he was born in Washington, D.C. And it's interesting, he works for the Washington Post. He's a photographer for the Washington Post. But anyway, the point is, it is a Thursday morning, and I won't be able to make videos because it looks like the next couple of days will be pretty busy around here with family. Our son Josiah and his wife Hannah is flying in today. And tomorrow morning, Friday morning, tomorrow we're having a breakfast. Our oldest son and his family who live down the street, will be here, and Hannah and Josiah, our son, and his wife Hannah, Marika, their little girl. So anyway, I just thought I'd just drop by, say hi. Hope you're having a good week. Like I said, it's Thursday morning here in West Michigan. I got up, been writing in my diary like I always do. I'm on page 565 this morning, and I was going to read. I want to mention a book that I've had for a long time, and I recommend it. I was reading that book on New Testament Biblical Theology, which I forgot to bring out here. But this is a book I keep in my study, and I read it all the time, off and on. And I highly recommend it if you're into New Testament theology. And it's called The Aims of Jesus by Ben F. Meyer, with a new introduction by N.T. Wright. This thing is just... It's just a great thing to have if you're really into New Testament theology, the historical Jesus, the Synoptic Gospels, the Johannine epistles. It's just, it's really a really good little book. And I read this yesterday morning. I think I was reading this. No, I don't think I read this one yesterday. Yeah, I did. Yesterday, I read Reformed Systematic Theology, Revelation and God by Joel R. Beeke, Paul M. Smalley, Volume 1. I think I finished the chapter on gods that are not God, where he critiques idolatry, worshiping false gods. So I read that. Oh, here is that Biblical Theology in New Testament. Yeah, if you're going to... When I'm reading this, Biblical Theology, New Testament by Peter Stuhlmacher, I keep thinking about this book, and that's why I got out. I keep it in my main study. I keep it near me because I'm always looking at it. This is a good little book. this thing's really big, this thing here, but you can read this. It's a lot more shorter text, but it's really good. So yeah, I also read yesterday evening The Personal History by Katharine Graham. It's kind of interesting. I mentioned I was reading this last month. I think it was several weeks ago. The Light Years. This is a memoir by Chris Rush. It's the story of this really dysfunctional family. The main character, who is Chris Rush, talks about his childhood and growing up, and his messed up family and his messed up life, and how he got into drugs and he got into all kinds of perverted behavior and became an addict, and just his really messed up life. I don't know why. I've been reading this, and I'm thinking, man, this is really like wading in a cesspool of depravity and perversion. And then you read a book like this, Katharine Graham, who grew up in a very wealthy family. Her father was did all kinds of things, and she grew up just super wealthy. And I was reading the part where she marries Phil Graham, and just the contrast of these two different lives. That's the point. And it's just really interesting reading and contrasting these two different lives, and which was the one that brought the most productive, the most sane, the most I don't know. I suppose when you get right down to it, the best life that you can read is the life of the historical Jesus. That's what I suppose I'm trying to say. When you look at human behavior, when you look at life, and if it's meaningful, and if it's enriching, if it really has a sense of purpose, or it's God glorifying, that's what it comes down to. Is my life glorifying God? Is it pleasing God? Did Katharine Graham's life please God? Did Chris Rush's life, he's still living, if his life, his conduct, his speech, his actions, his thought life, does it please God? That's what you got to ask yourself. I mean, if it doesn't please God, if our life is not directed to worshiping and glorifying God, isn't it just kind of tragic in a way? Well, it is, just to be honest. So I don't know. I just kind of like, when I'm looking at memoirs of men and women and their lives, I'm saying, what would their life be in the light of God's word? What would their life be judged on the last day when God looks at their lives and looks at my life? Has my life been God glorifying? Has my life pleased the Lord? Has my short little span of time I have on this earth, has it really been one where I have loved God and been obedient and sought to please Him? Now, I know that perspective is a Christian perspective. I'm sure that there are people in the world, I know there are people in the world who don't have that perspective, but that's the perspective that I, as a Christian, always have to live with. Like, I get up in the morning and I look at my days and I look at my time and I look how I spend my little span of time. Is my life pleasing to God? Anyway, somebody asked me this morning, I got a comment about the Christian Reformation commentary series. Do I recommend them? Yes, I recommend them. Now, they've been coming out for a number of years. I mean, I have gone in past videos explaining what these are. The Reformation commentaries look at, like, for example, on Romans 1 through 8. They go back to the time of the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation, and there's always been throughout church history men and women commenting on the books of the Bible in commentaries and liturgies and writings of all kinds, treatises. And what these people do who edit them, here Gwen Walters Adams, she goes through all these writings of that time period, the Anabaptist writings, Catholics, the Puritans, the Protestant Reforms, and they look at all these men and women and their writings and they look at their commentaries on Romans, and they take out quotes that they think shed light on a certain verse, a certain chapter there in Romans. Like I said, I've been reading Romans 1 through 8, and I'm on Romans chapter 2, verse 17 through 29. And they look at different commentaries. It's a massive work, but I'm sure a lot of it has been made somewhat easier due to the internet and scanning and things being online, and they look at these, and then they just put down what they think is the best quote or the highlights the text. So I enjoy them. I think that they are geared towards lay people, not only ministers and scholars, but you can read these books for devotions. That's the point. So I do recommend them. I got this one this year. I haven't even read it. This is on Jeremiah and Lamentations in the Old Testament. And then I was reading this one this year, John chapter 1 through 12. And then these are the ones on the Psalms. I have a lot more downstairs. I probably have 20 volumes thus far. There's another volume coming out in the fall that I already have pre-ordered. So I do recommend them. But I tell people, when you have old commentaries, like Reformation commentaries, they also did the Ancient Commentary series in Varsity Press, who publishes these. So I don't have everyone in the Ancient Commentary series, but they look at the writings of the Church Fathers. And there's also a series on medieval commentaries, which I have shown in the past. But it's not only having old commentaries from the Church Fathers, the medieval period, and the Reformation period, but also in the modern period. That's the point. You should, if you're going to have commentaries on Romans, you should have present-day commentaries, and I've shown those by Douglas Moo on Romans, or Thomas Schneider on Romans, or somebody like that. So it's good to have old and new. Not just look at the Puritans, or just look at the Reformers, but look at what modern New Testament scholars say on Romans, or what they say on the Gospel of John, or the book of the Acts of the Apostles, and things like that. That's what I try to do. I mean, I have commentaries on Romans. I have at least 20 commentaries on Romans, probably 10 on John. And when it comes to the Old Testament, there are not really that many good commentaries on Romans. I mean, there's not that many good commentaries on the Old Testament writings. There are a few, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. What I'm reading this morning, talk about The Aims of Jesus by Ben F. Meyer. I really recommend this. And I highly recommend the Biblical Theology New Testament. It's not really hard to read. I've been reading it. It's just straightforward. It's very plain, simple, but it's a good overview of the New Testament. If you can probably, might take you a year to read it, but your life would be enriched. And I also recommend the Reformation commentaries. Like I said, I've been reading on one of Romans. And I don't read these from cover to cover. I'll read them for 4, 5, 6 months, and then I'll just put them aside, or I'll get them out. But they're good to have. I really recommend them. Of course, it's a lot of reading, but hey, like I said, what better way to spend your time as you wait into that final day, that last day, the day of judgment. Keep your mind on, and one thing else, There's a lot of wisdom in these books, a lot of practical Christian living, a lot of practical application. I mean, it's just not all high in the sky kind of stuff. I mean, these men who wrote these commentaries, they were writing to lay people. They're not writing, or they're seeking to help common people, common Christians, live out their spiritual lives. So it's not just all dry academic. It's very practical, godly instruction on how to walk with God. So like I said, it's going to be busy around here. I just thought I'd make a video, just drop by and say hi. This morning my wife's coming home from work and we have to go grocery shopping because she has to feed all these people. And she enjoys that. My wife likes, she enjoys her grandchildren and having all the children home, and she's a mama and a grandma, and she's really into family and wants everything to be special, feasting and rejoicing and the love of family and things like that. And so I'm all for it. So I just hope you're having a good week. Thank you for the subscribers and the comments. And yeah, I hope you have a good weekend if I don't make a video. And until next time, bye.